This episode of Mastering Modern Midlife is brought to you by Easy Spirit. Now, more than ever, we know life is about more than just shoes. Being comfortable in your own skin and making life easier is what matters most. Welcome to Mastering Modern Midlife. I'm Katherine Grace O'Connell, and this show is powered by the Forever Fierce Revolution. I'm delighted to introduce my guest today. Brittany Wagner was the breakout star of Netflix's documentary, Last Chance U, and I am a huge fangirl of Miss Brittany. So welcome to the show, Brittany. We're so excited to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Brittany, you are an inspiration to, oh my God, millions of people all over the world. Were you surprised when the Netflix series came out? You were this unsung hero in the background that was really in the foreground of everything now.
I was completely shocked. I really thought it would be a show about football, and I thought, people that love football are going to watch this, and they're going to want the excitement that football brings. So they're going to be focused on the athletes and the statistics and the touchdowns, and they'll get to the part where my face comes on and my office, and they'll fast forward because, I had this belief that most fans of athletics didn't really care about the human being, the human being behind the ball. They cared about the talent. And so I just thought they're not going to care about the backstory of these players. They're not going to care about the lady that's trying to get them to go to class. They're going to care about the exciting football scenes. And what was shocking to me was that it was kind of the opposite, that instead of fast forwarding through the scenes in my office, people were fast forwarding through the football, and they were stopping and watching, what was going on in my office. And they were really intrigued by these young men and their stories. They were intrigued by my story and my role in their life. And it kind of restored my faith in humanity a little bit, because I think working in college athletics for so long, I had really lost a lot of hope that there were people out there that still cared about people.
Oh, I love that you share that and talk about, there was really a lot of divinity going in to get you to that point. Many of us watching the show had no idea that you'd actually been there for 6 years, and there was a whole backstory on how you found yourself into scuba. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I had been in the profession for probably 7 years before, at different schools at different levels, and had found myself getting a call from the president of East Mississippi asking me to come work there. And I had lived in Mississippi my whole life, and I had absolutely no idea where scuba was. And I thought, there is no way, I'm moving to this tiny little town and working in junior college. This is nuts. And I showed up when I finally decided to take the job, and I decided to take the job because I saw a real opportunity to impact lives. And I was working at a Power 5 school in the SEC, and I just felt like at that level, I wasn't impacting lives, really. I was just kind of checking the boxes of what needed to be done. And I saw the junior college level and those types of athletes as an ability to really make a difference in their life and kind of change their scope and their perspective, their self-esteem. And so I decided to take the job, but I showed up, and it was kind of funny. The first story that I really remember is showing up, and I needed to order office supplies. And so I put in a purchase order to order a stapler, and it got denied because the stapler I wanted to order was too expensive. And I remember thinking like, oh no, what have I gotten myself into if I can't even order a stapler? Like, there's no way. But then I had been at that school for 6 years. We had already won 3 national championships. I had already graduated a ton of athletes to the next level before Netflix ever came on board. And people ask me all the time, like, well, how did Netflix, know about East Mississippi and Scuba, Mississippi? And it's crazy because you never think in Mississippi that, fame is not ever a thought unless you're pursuing it. You don't ever think like, oh, well, I'll be famous, or what TV network is going to want to film anything in Mississippi is kind of what you grow up thinking. But GQ magazine came in and did an article on our program And executives in LA got that GQ article story and said, hey, this is more than just an article in a magazine. And so Netflix bought the rights to do the show, hired the producer, and next thing, it happened so fast. I remember getting a call from the producer, and then within a couple months, there were cameras in my office.
There's a story there too about the whole GQ and then coming in and doing that, the story, and you going and telling your family and everyone, oh my God, this is like my moment, and you're on the Books a Million floor. And talk about that, because again, there was a lot of divinity there, and you could have actually given up and said, okay, I'm done here. But there was magic on the other side.
Yeah. So there was a writer from New York that came in, and he spent about 6 months with us, actually. I mean, it wasn't just a day process. It was 6 months of him doing research and being around us, being in my office every day to write this feature story that GQ magazine did on our program. And he spent a lot of time with me and interviewed me extensively. Photographers came out and did this whole photo shoot with me. And yes, they were following our whole program, but I had spent so much time and spilled so much of my guts, and my own story to this author that I thought, there's no way I'll be cut out of this article. I'm a huge piece to this story. And so I'm so excited. This is like my moment of glory. I'm finally going to get to be seen as a part of this football program, because you're not, when you're the academic counselor, you're in the background and you're never really seen as a face of the program. And this was kind of my one shot. The magazine was coming out in October. I'll never forget it. I called all my family, friends. I mean, it was like, go to Books a Million tomorrow. Matthew McConaughey is going to be on the cover, and I'm going to be, a picture of me is going to be on the inside. And so I go to Books a Million the day that it's supposed to come out. And I'm scouring, looking for the GQ. I grab it. I grab the whole stack because I'm going to buy all of them because I'm in GQ magazine. This is big. And I open it and I start flipping, and I see our quarterback, a picture of our quarterback. I see our coach. I see pages and pages of text, and there's no picture of me. And I thought, okay, well, but they just didn't put the picture in. Like, let me sit down and read the article. And it's 4 or 5 pages long. So I sit on the floor of Books a Million and I'm reading the article, and I wasn't mentioned at all. I mean, it was as if I didn't even exist. And my heart was broken on so many levels. It was broken because I had taken so much time and been vulnerable and felt like I had really been honest in telling my story. And I felt like my story was an important piece of the puzzle. And then it was like, as if I was being slapped in the face, like, no, you're not important. And then my heart was broken because I did feel like I had helped build that program with our coach. And I did feel like I was vital. And it was almost as if, everyone, the universe was telling me that you're not important. And then I also felt a little bit like, because I was a female, I didn't fit in the mold of a football story. Like, they couldn't figure out where to put the female, which, that's a tough thing to swallow, to think like, well, if I had been a man, would I have made the story? And it was just that day where you think all this work and all this effort, this whole career that I've built doesn't matter to anybody, and you sit there. I sat on that floor of Books a Million, and I remember thinking like, I'm done. Like, I've had enough. If this guy has been around us for 6 months, an outsider who saw my worth, can't even figure out a way to insert me into this story, then I'm irrelevant. What am I even doing here? Nothing I'm doing is mattering. It was devastating to me to have to tell my family. I remember my mom calling and saying, well, where are you? I bought the magazine. Where are you? And having to say, like, I got cut. And so months went by. And then when I got the call from the producers of the show, I turned it down initially because I thought there was a little bit of that, like, well, I'm not going to go through that again. Like, I'll get cut from the show too, you know? And then there was a little bit of fear of being exploited, Mississippi being exploited, our players being exploited, and then myself being exploited. And so I initially turned it down and was just kind of in a bad place. I mean, I just was not feeling it, any of it, honestly. And then eventually, after meeting with the producer several times, I decided to do it. And I mean, it's that moment right before you want to give up, that the magic happens. And I think that has been so true in my life so many times.
Well, I think that's a beautiful lesson. And what you were saying was, you know, here this, you were getting your interpretation. I'm not relevant. I've cut out. And like you said, you could have given up. And that is a message all these women around the world are feeling right now at midlife and beyond, that they're no longer relevant. But it's so important then, you know, to continue that belief in ourselves and not let something outside in change that. Because like you said, this was waiting for you, but you had no idea at that low point. So you could have given up and all of this happened.
True. And if I had been in the story, those executives around that Netflix table could have said, we don't really want her. She's not, you know, that's kind of boring. We don't want her in the show. But there was no context. Nobody really knew who I was. And so it wasn't until the producers kind of showed up on campus that they were like, wait a minute, this woman is key. We've got to have her in the show. And, you know, I think that me not being in that GQ article probably was for the better. I mean, I think it was for the better. I learned some lessons of humility myself, which I probably needed to learn before I was given the platform that I was given. And I think that I was kind of that nice surprise for Netflix. And they did, I think, pay more attention to me and put the standing cameras in my office, because I was kind of that nice surprise that they weren't expecting when they showed up.
Well, there was another story too, the story going into scuba when they called and offered you the job and you actually turned it down, and then you had a conversation with yourself about your why. It wasn't so much the what that you were doing, it was about the why. So share that as well, because I think that was another one of those divine moments where you could have taken another path, but your why kept you going forward on the path that you're on.
Yeah, you know, I think everybody, we have a what and we have a why, and then we have kind of a how and a who in there at some point. And I think I used to tell athletes this all the time. You know, your what will get the job done, and it'll take you so far. It'll motivate you so far. But if your what is to play in the NFL, then when you get injured, where's your motivation? It's gone, because that what doesn't seem so attainable. But if you have a why, the why is what will motivate you to keep taking risk, to keep going forward, because there's a bigger motivation than just the what. If the what is to make money, but the why is because I don't want to ever go back to that apartment that I had to live in when I was struggling, then that is going to motivate you more than just having money. And so, you know, my why was I always wanted to make a difference. I always wanted to make a difference in these young athletes' lives. And I saw so many athletes where it truly was life or death for them. I mean, it truly was, they're either going to make it or they're going to be on the streets. And I knew that if I did this show and I could show the world that these were human beings and these were people, that I could affect real change. And I could either just sit in scuba and continue to affect the guys that came through my office on my own, or I could put it out there for everybody else to see and then affect millions. I also have a daughter and I'm a single mom, and I wanted my daughter to see her mom's work. And, you know, a lot of times as an academic counselor, you don't see the work. She may go to the football games with me, but she doesn't understand my impact or my role in making those football games happen. And so I think for that, I wanted it to be on camera and to document it for her so that she could be proud of her mom. and see my work and see my compassion for people that didn't look like me, didn't act like me, didn't come from where I came from, and be proud of that. Be proud of her mom.
Well, you share some really powerful stories in the many, interviews and research I've done with you. Talk about humility. The stories of these kids who come. I think you shared one story of a boy who rode a Greyhound bus for hours, I'm sure, there with only the backpack on his back, or the boy from Michigan from 8 Mile, who was probably one of the most heart-wrenching, eye-opening stories where you were questioning him about, that he wasn't behaving in the school that they bussed him to make his life better, and why is he doing all these things to fail out? Help me understand that. And you got a real, these kids are teaching you as well about life lessons.
These guys have taught me more than I ever could have taught them. So when I went to college, I showed up with a U-Haul. I mean, I had matching bedspreads. I had every resource, every item I needed to be successful. I had 2 supportive parents who drove me there and gave me a big ol' encouraging, hug and a kiss, who had been to college themselves and knew exactly how to guide me through that process. And to be quite honest with you, I achieved mediocrity in my education. I mean, I just did the bare minimum to get by. Very rarely did I ask for help or really put forth 100% of my effort. And so when I think about that and my own experience in college and the doubt, the self-doubt that I had, the feeling like I didn't belong or I wasn't smart enough to really be what I wanted to be. And then I look at these athletes that I've worked with, and they're showing up to college with literally a backpack, 2 pairs of clothes, and a toothbrush. I mean, their parents aren't educated. They have no clue what going to college actually looks like or means. They're probably academically not as prepared as a lot of their peers. And here they are, they showed up anyway. And I remember looking at them, and after I would hear their stories, I started changing. It just changed my perspective, because before I think my attitude was like, well, do it. You're here. You're being given an opportunity. What's wrong with you? And then I started hearing their stories and seeing where they were coming from and connecting with their insecurities and their self-doubt. And it just changed me. I mean, it changed me at my core to think, we're all a product of our experiences.
How important it is for these kids for the first time, maybe lives, to be sitting across from you and having someone that actually sees the best in them, believes in them, is able to see something they can't see.
I think it's key to anyone's success, no matter what you're doing. I mean, we all want to be accepted. We all want to be understood. And when you walk into an environment where you don't feel comfortable, and then someone sees you, like really sees you, and connects with you and accepts you exactly where you are, it's comforting. And it gives you that confidence to say, I can do this. I can do this because she believes in me. She says I can do this, so maybe I can. And you know what? I think that I've experienced that my whole life, of feeling like, am I good enough for this? Or do I really belong on Netflix? Or can I really start my company? And there's always been somebody there to say to me, go for it, you can do it. And it's like, until you have that voice, and for some reason, I don't know why, but a lot of times it has to be somebody else, because we don't talk to ourselves that way. But when you hear that other voice saying, you can do this, you're good enough, you're strong enough, then all of a sudden we believe it. And so I think for the guy sitting across from me, and truth be told, whether or not I honestly believed they could do it or not, didn't matter. As long as I was acting like I thought they could do it and believing in them and talking that talk, they would end up doing it because I believed in them.
It's funny. I guess you were already groomed for being an actress. Without knowing it.
Sometimes I was completely acting.
Oh, that's so beautiful and powerful.
Why Easy Spirit and Mastering Modern Midlife? Because we both believe in age positivity. Midlife is a time for women to design their life on their terms, and Easy Spirit is on a mission. As makers of shoes and experiences that are all about making life easy for all women, especially for you, the modern midlife woman. I move for women at Midlife and beyond to help you ignite your ultimate potential and purpose. Easy Spirit wants to know, what do you move for?
Yeah, no, I think that's really beautiful. The catalyst thing, that sometimes we need an external catalyst in order to light that fire inside of ourselves. We can go, oh my God, she sees it in me. He sees it in me. So it must be there and must be real.
Right. I think a lot of times we think we're crazy, well, it's crazy for me to try to do this. Like, that's crazy. I could never do that. But when someone else sees it or says it, we don't look at them as being crazy. They're stable, they're smart, they know what they're talking about. So if they see it in me, then it must be real. I think the key, especially to us as women, is to be able to learn to have that self-talk with ourselves and not always relying on someone else to kind of spark it for us, but learn how to have that positive self-talk to where we inspire ourselves.
Well, self-talk is key in everything in life. And I think one thing you talk about is most of these players, they believe in themselves on the field and then they leave the field. So they've got one self-talk going on when they're playing football. They leave football and they have a whole different level of self-talk. So let's talk about that, because I think that's a universal issue.
Yeah, well, I think it's what's been instilled in them at a very young age. It's amazing to me. The more that someone says something to you, you start to believe it. And when you believe it, you become it. And so these athletes, I would hear their stories, and so many of them would say, like, well, all I ever heard was, you have to be good at football because you can't be good at anything else. Or you have to get a scholarship with football because there's no way you'll ever get into college otherwise. And so when you hear that day in and day out for 18 years, that's what you believe, that all you are is a football player. It's your only shot. And there's a confidence when you're good at something, there's a confidence out there that you have on that field. And when you put on that uniform, it's almost like morphing into a different person. And I think, I've heard Beyonce talk about morphing into Sasha Fierce before she goes on the stage, because she's not really that confident performer that she appears to be on the stage. And there's almost like a personality transformation for her before she goes out there. And I think athletes, a lot of times, they're very insecure human beings. And hence the aggression and the ability to perform well on the field is they're working all that out. But you take them off the field and they're very insecure about navigating social skills. A lot of them are insecure about being in large environments where there's a lot of people, which is crazy because they're playing in front of thousands of people on a field and they're not insecure at all. And then you put them in an academic setting where we navigate a box that we want them to fit in. You got to sit like this, you got to dress like this, you got to act like this. And they don't fit in that box. And when you don't fit in the box that you're supposed to fit in, you lose your sense of self-esteem. Yes, exactly. One thing I'm really getting from you is, like you were talking about being on the football field, and a lot of what they get is outside in. So they get this glorification for their athleticism, for their prowess, for what they can accomplish on that field. And they leave that field, but internally, you're building a human being really from the inside out. Like you said, this is about life. It's not about football. Yeah, there's a term in psychology that I've learned lately called Impostor Syndrome. And I think it's true for all of us, where we feel like we're an imposter in our own lives. And, I feel it a lot of times now as a celebrity. Like I'm not a celebrity. I don't feel like a celebrity. And I feel like I'm going to get found out at any moment. At any moment, the world's going to find out that I'm not as great as everyone thinks I am. And I think the same is true for athletes. They almost feel like there's this, like, I hope nobody realizes that I can only read on a 4th grade level, or I hope nobody realizes that I'm really homeless, because then I'm found out and I'm a failure and I'm an imposter in my own life. And I think it's really important to see these athletes and anybody as a human being rather than a statistic or a number figure, to see people as human beings and to start instilling confidence and self-belief inside of them so that they have the ability to change their own path. Because if we don't instill in them the confidence and self-esteem to value themselves in order to see themselves as more than a football player. Yes, you're a great football player, but that's not all you are. There are other things out there for you. But for so many of these athletes, nobody's ever said that to them. And so they've never even considered, what the other side looks like. I think we as women have gone through the same thing. We're wives, we're mothers, we're homemakers. That's what we're supposed to do.
That's our identity.
That's our identity. And nobody's ever said to us, but wait a minute, you can be a career woman too. You can be a business owner too. Nobody ever says that to us. And until somebody kind of sparks that flame in us, I think a lot of times we step back and go, well, I could never do that. And that's a lie that we're telling ourselves.
Well, I love that you talk about imposter syndrome. So you just made me think of a story that I had briefly touched on earlier from 8 Mile in Michigan. This young boy, I think his name was KJ, and talk about imposter syndrome. Here's this young boy trying to function in this world. He's at a school he's being bussed into so he can live this better life. But his reality is something that nobody knows, and he is probably most likely carrying a lot of shame about that. And then you get him to open up and his entire world changes. So please share that story, because I think it's a powerful lesson in vulnerability.
Yeah, the truth to KJ's story was that he was homeless and he was just struggling to get through every day. And here he was being bussed in from where he lived to a better school, which is a great opportunity for him, but also he doesn't fit in. I mean, it's tough. And he goes to this school where nobody looks like him. He feels underprepared. He feels not as smart as the rest of his peers. He could only take a shower on the days that coach would let him shower after practice. So even his smell, probably wasn't what everyone expected. And there was a lot of self-doubt being created. But here he was trying to better his life by going to a different school other than the one he was supposed to go to. And so it was like this conflict. And he was getting made fun of because he didn't fit in. People, were shaming him and kind of beating him up mentally and emotionally because he didn't fit in. And he had been going to this school for months and nobody knew his name. And people had named him Ugly Man. They had nicknamed him Ugly Man because he didn't look or smell like anyone else. And so here he was, and he was in trouble because he had been fighting. And that's all we saw was the symptom, the aggressiveness and the fighting. And no one had gotten to the root of the issue. And so when I was talking to him, he told me his story. And he said, I take it and I take it and I take it, and then I hit someone. And, that's so true. And I think we all do that to a point in our lives. We take it and we take it and we take it.
Stuff and stuff and stuff.
Yeah. And then we explode, or we hit someone. But for him, I think, and it's true for all of us, when we just own our own story, he was working so hard to try to cover up his truth. And when we just own our own story and stop trying to hide our truth and we share it, I think the beauty of it is we will gravitate towards those people that are going to be kind, that are going to see us, see our story, and they're going to be kind. And what happened was when he told his teammates his story, they were kind. They had no idea. And immediately they were apologizing. Immediately he had a place to stay. People were giving him new cleats. I mean, his whole world changed because he put it out there and he didn't hide behind it anymore. And then he was shocked at the response he got back. But I think that's the beauty of kind of the universe. When we own our own story and we put it out there, we attract it back. And it changed his life for sure.
Yeah, and you talk about kindness, and I believe at one point you said the secret to your success is kindness.
No doubt. And, and I certainly have my days where I'm like, nope, not doing it today. Today's not the day. But, I think at my core, compassion and kindness, I think that's what connected me with the world. I think the world watched me, and you could tell I wasn't hiding it. You could tell I was frustrated. I was overworked. I was underpaid. I was stressed. You went home with me and you saw the, lack of glamour that my life consisted of. And I think people connected with the fact that despite all that, I was still finding a way to be patient and kind. And I think that really has been the key to my connection with fans of the show and really presented me with the opportunities that it has.
Who were you before this Netflix show, and who are you now? How has it changed you?
I feel like I'm the same in a lot of ways. I do think I have more confidence in myself. I think just that show and the fact that everyone did gravitate to me and really people were fantastic to me. I got so many motivating emails and opportunities from it. And I think that gave me confidence. It kind of validated that, okay, I am good, I can do this, and I am good at my job, and I'm a good human being. And now I'm being validated by the world. That helps, certainly. But I think it gave me confidence to to go out on my own and do things that I would have never in a million years have had the confidence to do otherwise. Other than that, I don't really feel like it's changed me a whole lot. I mean, certainly I don't go places without knowing that
being recognized,
probably going to ask for a picture or be recognized. But I mean, in my day-to-day life and who I am at my core, I don't think it's really changed me that much. I don't get caught up in the hoopla and the fame a whole lot. I'm not sure where that came from, but I figured out real quick that as things in life that are important take time and work. And so to get 10,000 or 100,000 Twitter followers in a span of, 48 hours, that took no work. That took no effort. And as fast as they like me, they'll leave me.
Yes.
And so I don't get caught up in that. It's great, but it's not like I'm getting paid for every Twitter follower I have. You
have a solid,
but
you have a solid foundation.
Right. But I recognize that they don't validate, my Twitter followers don't validate who I am.
Yes, that's beautiful. Again, not external. You were very, have a solid foundation in who you are and very rooted and grounded in this beautiful, lovely story that has built you to who you are today. So you are also 41 years young. So that makes you officially a midlife woman. Not that we put an age on midlife, but what to you as a woman at midlife now, what do you see the power of midlife? Clearly we have this wealth of life experience, and who you were at 20 isn't who you are today. I see it as a great gift.
I do too. Wisdom. We have the power of wisdom. I look at myself at 20, 22, and all the way through my 20s, and I think I had nothing to draw from. I was just doing and going and doing, and everything was a big deal at that age. Like everything was life and death, and everything was dramatic because I had nothing to compare it to. I hadn't lived through anything. And I look now at 41 and living through marriage, divorce, childbirth, death of loved ones. I've lived through so much that the fact that the yard guy doesn't trim, my hedges the way that I want is really not that big of a deal. Like, it's going to be okay. And I just think I pick and choose what matters to me now more than I did when I was 20. I can remember getting worked up and angry and letting things ruin my day at 20 that honestly had no relevancy to the next day. They weren't even important enough to make it to the next day. And at 41, I don't hang on to that. I don't sweat the small stuff. I know what's important. And I pick my battles based on the wisdom and the life experiences that I've lived through.
So we have a lot of women in our audience that are in the process of reinvention. Like you mentioned, divorce is a big one, being aged out of jobs and not having another job to go into, or major, health, clearly myself personally as well, but some real serious health challenges, sometimes life-threatening. What advice or real practical, actionable steps would you give them? Maybe 3 steps in their own lives if they are going through this process of reinvention and many of them losing belief in themselves.
I think my dad, I can remember going through divorce or going through career change and situations. And my dad's a psychologist. So I would always call him and I would want like this profound advice. I would want him to have something that's going to change my life, And his advice was always, hold on. This too will pass. And I remember getting upset, being like, Dad, no, really, what do I do? Help me. And he would say, Brittany, that is what you do. You just stop and hold on because it's not going to last forever. Nothing is permanent. Everything is temporary. It's not going to last forever. And I think a lot of times we want to control and fix today. And the truth of the matter is it's not supposed to be fixed today because we're supposed to learn something and we can't learn it that fast. So we've got to just hold on and know and have that belief in something bigger than us that it's going to work itself out. It'll be okay. My dad used to say well, did it kill you? I would say, I would have some problem, well, did it kill you? Well, no. Well, then you're okay. And I mean, that's so true. There's not much that we go through that's going to kill us, really. I mean, and if we lived through it, we lived through it. So check that off.
Makes us stronger, right?
Yeah.
If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
We lived through it. Yeah. So I think, hold on is a big key. I think the other key is go for it. I think go for it. Whatever it is to you, go for it. Again, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, if you're already sitting at a point where you've lost a job or you're in a career change and you're in limbo, then what's the worst that could happen? You'll be right there still. So go for it. Figure it out what it is and do it. I think the other thing too is sometimes we wait for the grandiose opportunities, but we're getting opportunities, but we're not seeing them because it's not maybe the opportunity that we wanted. And I can relate to that from working at East Mississippi. That wasn't necessarily the dream job. I mean, that wasn't necessarily the greatest phone call ever the day that I got offered the job to go work in Scuba, Mississippi, but it was an opportunity. And I saw it as that and I took it. And then I worked hard on myself. I worked hard on the career and look where it took me.
All these beautiful things unfolded. We have these choice points in our life, and you took the choice point that went along with your why, and there was a lot of divinity along the way.
And it all aligns. But I think sometimes we turn down those opportunities that really are going to align us with our path because they're not shiny enough. They're not sparkly enough for us. So we turn our nose up at them. And I would say take the opportunity.
Because we can never know what's down the road and where that is going to lead us. And speaking of where it's going to lead us, there is some new exciting news about Courtney Cox and you. And wow, I know. So let's share it with the world.
Again, it's like a pinch me moment. But I got an email of all things about a year ago from Michael Strahan's company, Smack Entertainment, wanting to have a conference call with me and Strahan and his team and then Courtney Cox. And I'm like, Courtney Cox? And I'm thinking in my head, surely that's another person. It can't be
can't be her.
Yeah, it can't be Courtney Cox. And so I get on the phone and the minute she said hello, I mean, I knew the voice. And it's just amazing. She's a huge fan of the show. She's a huge fan of women empowerment and she loves that strong female lead character in a show. And she had really was looking for something to get back into TV, and it was at the point in her career as a middle-aged woman where she can choose what she wants to do, and she doesn't have to just take everything. And she chose this, which I just, it's amazing. And Strahan, obviously, with his football background, he's a huge fan of the show, and so it's just super exciting to have those people to be a fan of my work and then want to put it out there on a different level. And this show will be scripted, obviously, with Courtney playing me, but it'll really be about me. It'll be about my story and all of the backstory, of the 15 years and up to my present life now. Life still isn't all sunshine and rainbows. So there's still some ebb and flow in my life.
Bumps in the road, yeah.
No doubt. And that will get played out too. And there's some really important stories that didn't get shown on Netflix, and we want to tell them. And so, I'm so excited to have.
Wow, that's huge news. I'm obviously a Courtney fan, grew up on Friends, so fantastic. I can't wait to tune in for that. So I guess before we sign off today and direct people to your new venture, tell them all about what you're doing now and how they can work with you or have you, inspire their audience out there if they have an event. I know a lot of people are curious about the fact that the entire time watching the 2 years, the 2 seasons with you at the school, there was never a single interaction with you and Buddy, who I clearly have been public about. I was not a fan. I was a fangirl of yours. I was not a fan there. I was like, my stomach was in knots and watching the way he communicated with these players. So, what was the deal?
Oh, that was the deal.
Yeah, that was the deal.
What you see is what you get with him. That's how he was. There was no acting there on his part either. We struggled a lot. He got paid to win. I got paid to graduate, athletes and keep them eligible. So we kind of had different, we had different goals, I guess. Yeah. So I can't really fault him for that a little bit. But he was a little bit tough to deal with. And he would probably say the same about me. Again, we're both stubborn, hard-headed, going for our goals. So, but the way he talked to the athletes, a lot of times you never saw it on camera, but was the exact same way he would talk to me, which just wasn't what I liked walking into every day. So it was tough. I will say that after watching seasons 3 and 4 with Jason Brown, the coach at Independence, I would choose Buddy every day over that guy.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's a good one to know. I am watching that right now. I think I'm close to the end of the second year there and crushed that Bobby had just done something bad and had to leave the school. And yeah, I totally hear you. I can understand that because I'm not a fan of his either. They have very different philosophies in coaching, but I think that's an interesting point you make there.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine working for him. And I don't
somehow
know,
it works.
So maybe he's a great person, but from what I see on TV, no.
Yeah. Well, they have a very, very different mandate, as you said, and they're able to be successful in that, narrow mandate they have, but they don't have to have these people go out in the world and grow up to be beautiful human beings, and you've done an amazing job. So, and speaking of that now, you are going around the world. You are speaking, you are a motivational speaker, inspirational speaker, which is crazy wonderful. So you have a whole new venture. So let's talk about that briefly and where people can find you.
Yeah, well, I have a company, 10,000 Pencils. My website is BrittanyWagner.com, and you can book me on there for speaking engagements. I've really done the gamut of speaking engagements. I started out doing mostly schools, so I was mostly speaking to sports teams or student bodies, everywhere from high schools, colleges, universities, or speaking to faculty, administration. Now I've kind of broken the mold, and I'm doing conferences. I'm doing corporate events, conventions for corporate events, because the message is universal. The messages that I sent to those athletes are the same messages we all need to hear. And it's learning how to build relationships with people, see them for who they are, meet them where they are. It's an inspiring, the message that we all can make a difference no matter what we're doing. And we can, one person at a time, create a culture change. And so that's really the message that I go out and speak about. And I love it. I love meeting fans everywhere. It allows me to travel and meet people everywhere. I also do consulting. So schools will hire me to come in and work with counselors, administrators, coaches on how to kind of better form an academic support program for at-risk athletes, or how to deal with that at-risk athlete better, how to better form those relationships. And I like doing that as well. I always love meeting the students and the athletes around the country. So it's been a fun 2 years for sure.
Yeah, definitely an amazing life you are living today, doing incredible things in the world. And hopefully, be it this year or another year, we'll get you to FierceCon, we'll get you meeting these incredible women in person, because you are a huge inspiration to me. And before we go, because this show is sponsored by the amazing company, Easy Spirit. I'm wearing my Easy Spirits here today, and I'm wearing very unusual attire that is totally for you. It's as close as I get with my 4 freshman class, Letterman's jacket here.
I love it.
Easy Spirit, every month they have a theme of asking people, what do you move for? And this month is all about learning. So, Brittany Wagner, what do you move for?
Well, I move for several things. I move physically for my body, because here's the thing. At 41 years old, my body is still functioning and it is still holding up for me every single day. And I think that is amazing. And I am proud of my own body for showing up and being present for me every day. So I move to keep feeding my own body. I also move for my daughter. I think that it is important. I am the biggest role model she will ever have. And it's important for her to see me valuing myself, my body, my physical body, but my mental and emotional body, and feeding it. And so I really am very deliberate in making sure that she sees me taking care of myself, so that she will in turn do that for herself one day as well. In learning, I move to inspire other people to grow. And learning is not all academics. Learning is also growing ourselves mentally, emotionally. And I move to inspire other people to really work at being their best self and believing in their best self.
Well, you do that. You've done that for me. I know you're doing it for people all over the world. I know you're doing it right now for our amazing audience. So thank you so much for being with us today and being such a delightful inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Absolutely. So with that, beauties, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to check out Brittany, the amazing work she's doing in this world. And if you have an event, reach out to her. Consider having her to inspire you at your event. And thank you for being part of the Forever Fierce Revolution. If this show inspired you, please share it. Please comment. Please subscribe. Please let everybody know, so we can do some amazing things and touch hearts all around the world. And with that, cheers, beauties. Stay fierce.